Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I'm joined here by Colin McGhee, $1 million, £1 million, million euro biller and owner and founder of Paragon. How are you today?
Not too bad, Dulce, apart from 5 hours sleep with two little children keeping us awake late last night. I'm absolutely fine and lovely to meet you, and you're very welcome, you and Charlotte, to Dublin. And thank you so much for coming in to us today. Looking forward to this. A little bit nervous, but
well, you've made it to the big time now, buddy.
I don't know about that. Thank you.
So, how we normally start this is where it all began for you. How did you get into this this crazy industry that we're in?
It's great, this brilliant industry.
Yeah.
So 20 years in recruitment as of last month.
Wow.
And the two of us kind of took a similar journey, starting with Robert Walters back in the city of London a long time ago. So before I went into Walters, I worked in a boutique firm in London called Fee Jones in technology recruitment.
Yeah. And
before Fee Jones, I worked in the hospitality industry. So would have trained through hotels and restaurants, and it just gave me a real insight into customer service, into helping people, and the service industry. I would have trained in the hotel business.
I worked in the hospitality industry, although it wasn't as posh as that. I was running nightclubs in Brussels, and I remember dealing with bouncers and dealing with it was craziness. And I remember cleaning up broken ashtrays at 4 a.m. And then when I got into recruitment, I had a terrible day one day, so I was like, "Oh, how do you this doesn't seem to affect you. How do you manage that?" I just take myself back to those hospitality days.
Yeah.
It's a lot tougher, isn't it, doing that type of thing?
It is, Dilton. I would have trained with a company here called the Doyle Hotel Group, and then juries, and I would have worked in London and Paris and Greece and Austria for many years within hospitality. And then I, like everybody, we have a story of how we got into recruitment. I'm not going to share that whole story in this podcast now, but look, I met someone in London who I was very, very impressed with, who was working half the hours I was working, and was doing very well for himself from a career perspective, and having a little bit of personal time to do what we love to do in life, whether it's
weekends.
Sports. You said it, absolutely. Weekends, tennis, golf. So he introduced me to the recruitment industry, and then I went about making some introductions in London and got a couple of offers, and the rest is kind of history. Yeah.
What was it like working for Walters in those days?
Walters was brilliant. Yeah, Walters was brilliant.
How many years did you
I was there nearly 5.5 years.
Okay.
So on my first day in Walters, I got to meet a guy called Chris Hickey. So Chris is now Chief Executive Officer for Walters UK, Ireland, and parts of Europe and the Middle East. So Chris and myself started on the first day back in, oh my God, a long time ago. I need to check the exact dates, but it was a long time ago. So we started with Chris, and so met some really good people, and a lot of people who've stuck with recruitment have done very well. I worked on the contract desk in London, and then came over to help set up their business in Ireland.
Oh, so were you part of that founding team for the Irish business?
Yeah, I was, myself and a lady called Caroline Harrison, Niamh O'Brien. There's a couple of people who came through. So worked in Dublin for about 4 years with Walters and really enjoyed it, and then decided that Walters, the training is fantastic, it's a good company. Worked with a really good guy called Chance Wilson, and learned a lot, really good training, and then decided, maybe I can do this myself, maybe I can't, maybe I can.
What was that? Because so you actually were in recruitment for quite a bit of time before you decided to make that jump. What led? What were those last days that made you make your mind up that now the time's right, I'm going to back myself, I'm going to go outside of a big machine that's been very good to me? How did you know?
It's a really good question. I think, to be totally transparent, it came down to a bit of boredom. I think, I'm not going to, mention, Walters or this or that, but I think if you're working in an environment where it's just very specific to one country, it can just become monotonous. And I think back then the world with globalization and technology, and I have a massive interest in economics and the world, and all sorts of matters from South America to the US. I'm just really interested in how the world operates and how trade. I'm big into trade, and I think the role I had in Dublin was very specific to Dublin.
Yeah.
And boredom just crept
They have a
in with it.
localised, because when I was working for them, I was doing IT infrastructure within a certain niche, and it was good, and it was great, and I'm appreciative of it. But I remember thinking, God, there must be something else out there, and I didn't know at the time. But S3 had scaled just across the road. They were placing oil and gas engineers all around the world for bigger fees, and hearing that kind of got my brain going. And so when you set out, did you think, I'm going to change the mold here? Did you have somebody who was able to look at, you've done that before, I'm going to copy that model and place people overseas? Like, how did that all come about?
It came about on a trip I would have had. So there was a large asset manager setting up in Dublin that I would have been responsible for influencing, through one of the bodies here in Ireland. And we did a huge amount of work with them locally through Walters and through a connection that I helped and Walters helped me achieve. And then that business became a very big business in Ireland, and then we got an opportunity to pitch for them setting up in Asia, in the emerging markets team. We were working in the liquid space, so we were working in fixed income and equities, and I was like, look, if we can do this in Ireland and we can bring talent into Dublin and we can attract, recruitment is about endurance, it's about courage, it's about overcoming obstacles, it's about, continue believing in yourself. So, of course it was challenging, it's always going to be challenging, and it's not challenges that make you a stronger person, and it's learning from your mistakes. And so, long story short, the first year was very, very challenging, and it was very, very difficult. And
was it just you? Was there other people?
Just me, working at home in my apartment, and setting up the websites, meeting candidates, meeting clients. So the first year was very challenging, and we kind of struck gold at the end of the year when things were literally at the bone, placing a candidate with an asset manager, and then it goes from there. And recruitment is a business based on confidence and based on momentum, and then we just kind of started the journey from 2004 right up to where we are today, 2019.
If you could go back to yourself then, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to be a little bit gentler on that, like life isn't...
Gentler to yourself?
Gentler to myself, yeah, because I think we can be very critical in recruitment of we could have done this, we could have done that, and as there's a famous quote from Yeats, experience is the name we give to our mistakes, and people do make mistakes, and it's okay, and just to learn from it and move on. But I think the most important thing was to expectations. I had an expectation that we'd have a cracking start, and it just didn't happen like that. And looking back, I probably should have enjoyed it a little bit more, but it was fascinating, and just great to get through it, and great to be where we are today. Yeah. And
you still bill?
Yes.
Do you believe that any good business that's of a certain size, people should bill?
Look, as I said, that's $1 million. That's a really good question. I think it's really important for... we're an SME, we're a boutique business, there's 16 people here at the moment, we're growing. I think it's really important for a business our side, for the leader to build, because everyone needs to ring the till, everyone needs to, the intelligence for recruitment comes from meeting candidates. It never changes. Like, I still have, my days are split into candidate calls, candidate meetings, client meetings. I have someone in the background looking after processes. Again, I think successful businesses have business owners should have to put their hand up and talk about the weaker side of what they need in the business.
Steer into what you're good
completely. So I love sales, I love billing, and I've had some great years, I've had some big years, I've had some not so big years. This year has been a challenging year. It could finish off very good, but it's hard to know.
Do you like the not knowing? If there's a good percentage of the one?
As I said to you earlier on, I believe in karma. So I think if we do everything with integrity, and as I spoke earlier on, we're just in the process of a huge bit of business in the Middle East, and I spoke with an email there an hour ago about pulling a candidate out of the deal because I just didn't feel it was right from a family perspective, that they really were committed to a move to the UAE, and we had to speak to the candidate and the client today just to pull back. And I think if we look at recruitment and look at everyone's interests involved, it's not just about us putting a big fee in the board, it's about us walking through the process with the candidate and the wife and the children and the relocation. And about an hour ago we had a situation where we could have put a fee up today that would have made our quarter, but we had to back down, and it just didn't feel right. And we had to sometimes
the recruitment gods will take care of it.
Yes, and I put my hand up. Sometimes a no is a no.
Your wife is in the business as well?
Neva's on the operations side. She comes with kind of 20 years experience. She's not in the business every day, but she supports. I
know how that goes.
I believe you're in a similar situation as well, Victoria. She's a director in the business, but the operations of the business now is left to Ben and newly promoted John as well. So and Keith, and she helps out. She's fantastic, and her 20-year track record. She's come from sales. She's come from recruitment. She worked in CPL. She's worked in Irish jobs, so she gets it.
Yeah, deadly. So you mentioned you have 3 key leaders in the business. What type of disciplines are you guys doing?
So I look after 100% of my time is looking after the Paragon Alpha brand. Yeah. So we're in the process of setting up in the US. As I said, we have a boutique office in Manhattan, and we have a search out for kind of a director now for the Americas, and we're down to the final 3. So I'm very, very a huge part of my role is the build out of Paragon Alpha, and that's a brand that I'm very excited about. It covers the world globally. It covers Singapore, Hong Kong, right across the UAE, Luxembourg, Paris, London, Connecticut, New York, Chicago, and LA. So
and in our first chat, I was saying to you, I think SME business owners your size in this city, which there are quite a few, they're missing a trick not setting up in America, and everybody the same size in the UK is going after it and seeing that the fees are there. There's an opportunity to attract more graduates into your own business with the view of promising a move to the US if you're successful. It just seems like it's all there to be taken. What's that process been like for you to get registered and to find somebody over there?
Yeah, look, we're kind of 5 years, so we're just coming to 5 years trading in the US, and it's like anything, things. So you asked me about my earlier start in recruitment. With the first year was really tough. Bizarrely, our first year in America was amazing. We built over $1 million in our first year, which is just phenomenal. Yeah. We don't talk too much about that. But and people know this. I mean,
we just drop it on podcasts.
Well, look, it's phenomenal for a boutique business to achieve that in a year with no funding, nothing from any association, and the IDA's Enterprise Ireland are fantastic. But we did it ourselves. But the reality between where Ireland is situated and access to the US, look, it's a 20 trillion economy. You can get an ESTA visa for £20, $20. Yeah. It guarantees you 90 days work, in the US, or to be able to participate in business over there. There are obviously rules and regulations around it, but the access to the US between the airlines, being able to to be able to check in here and arrive, and to be in meetings when you arrive in New York, get 3 or 4 meetings done, get your run in Central Park, have a drink, hang out with a client, and then have 6-7 meetings the next day and fly home.
Yeah, that's what we did.
It's phenomenal. Like, yes, you are tired, but look, there's a huge amount of energy. So to answer your question, we just did it. We didn't do a huge amount of strategic thinking. We had a little bit of intelligence around the alternative investment space. We had some contacts in Connecticut. Went out to Connecticut, went very well, and they liked us. We did some work with them. Then the introductions then just started between Connecticut, New York, Chicago, and our conversation last month about San Diego.
Yeah. So what's the plan moving forward? Are you thinking of building out offices there, or are you going to run it from here?
We're absolutely thinking about about having an established office. We're just working out whether it's East Coast or West Coast, but a lot of our intelligence at the moment is telling us that it'll be a boutique office on the East Coast and a larger office on the West Coast, because again, go back to our conversations, lifestyle in San Diego, LA is just phenomenal.
I think there's more, like, if you want the best recruiters, the ones who are probably a bit more seasoned, if you're going into San Diego's probably a good spot. You can move with your family. It's relatively affordable. Manhattan, you're really looking at people sub 30 who are single, and you're competing with.
I would disagree with that, but yeah, you're not saying disagree. Well, the reality is,
just in terms of cost, right?
Yeah, in terms of cost, I think, look, the opportunity in the US, doesn't matter where you are, is just phenomenal. So, fingers crossed in 12 months' time, we're going to be established over there. We have 3 people now at last place, or gone through a short list for a head of Paragon for the Americas. So we're very excited.
Yeah.
We'll see. Nothing is the only thing that's guaranteed in recruitment is nothing's guaranteed. So we'll, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and so let me take you back to within how you run your desk. Are you able to self-analyze what you do well, and then when somebody comes in for an interview, do you have certain ways of working out if they're made of the right stuff? Is there certain kind of questions that you ask them each time?
Well, just going back to, I don't think I wouldn't say anything here is my success. Everything is, the first year possibly, but ever since then it's been a team event, complete team event. And I think, recruitment has to be a team event, and I would never want to go back to, working by myself or, as I did when I was starting it up. So everything here, apart from that year, has been a complete team event, and everything, when you look at the, the analysis of how deals happen and how the intelligence and the flow comes in, it's through gathering information and having the ability and the common sense to, make that call, get that meeting, and just chase down leads, but done in a very charming way, in a very consultative way. This is a sales job, but it's one of the few sales jobs in the world that doesn't feel like selling, I think, if it's engineered correctly. But going back to, your question with regards to talent, look, everything is attitude. I mean, the one thing I look at, and I was looking at a CV last night, and I just knew that this person, I hadn't spoken to him, just from a CV perspective, I said to someone else, this guy's going to be a star.
What was it about the CV that jumped out?
First of all, recruitment experience, which is great, so we love that, because we want to just, particularly on the alpha desk, we'll bring people in and we'll train. He was a graduate just with, so what I loved about his experience is, and what we look for, regardless whether you're coming in with little experience or 2 to 3 years, is, are you a person of interest, right? And what I mean by that is, because everybody wants to meet interesting people.
Yeah.
So if you're a person of interest, if you're a person of interest and you have an attitude, and an attitude where you've got a little bit of gratitude, right? I think that's really important when we talk to people. People who are grateful will do very well in recruitment. People who have these expectations that everything is given to them will do well. Yeah. But just reading this kind of CV, I haven't actually spoken to him yet. But I'm talking to him today at 4:00. This is a guy that
he better do well.
He will do well. And it just I've seen hundreds of these CVs. Yeah. Now, whether we're lucky enough to bring him on board, we'll certainly have a conversation today. But this is a guy that worked through college. This is a guy that worked in Texaco. This is a guy that went and did some really cool J1s in the US. He's interested in sport. He has indicated on his CV that he's a person of interest with his travel. Yeah. With his sporting, he's a bright guy, but not too bright.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, no disrespect to this is a people business. It's a business that requires high level of emotional intelligence. With a lovely combination of practical intelligence, meaning how have you been brought up? Are you street smart? Yeah. And his CV tells me this.
Street smart, logical thinker.
Completely. This guy spent summers in Chicago. He's spent summers in LA. He's done all that, and he's a sports guy, which is great. Obviously, there's a lot of people in this business who mightn't be sports and bring other things to the table, but just from his CV, and obviously I'll let you know later on, he looked like a really good young guy, and even his introduction to CV was just a really good, solid basis to be successful in recruitment, and that's what we look for.
Do you ever meet some people and think, you'd be better suited to go into one of the bigger shops for a bit, or like maybe you're not quite, like, what is it that you identify in somebody that they're right for you, but maybe they might be right for a different business?
Look, it's a really good question, and like no one, it doesn't matter whether you're Goldman Sachs, a large institution, Bank of America, Paragon, like everyone gets hiring, wrong, and it's not even a case of wrong. You have to try, right? There's obviously a trial period, but there's people we've hired that we probably, they would have been suited to a larger firm. We didn't see it at the time. We're learning every day. Every day is a school day. I'm 20 years in recruitment, and that's why we've put together a very good, strong non-exec team to try to get things, to learn from other people's wisdom and other people's mistakes. But we've hired people. We've always hired very good people, very likable people who've got great attitude. And some of these people absolutely would have been more suited to a bigger machine, and that's just life. That's not that they're
for sure
not going to be great. Given
you came from a big machine a long time ago, do Are you able to kind of articulate this is going to be a bit tougher than it was for you in Hayes or Walters or wherever it was that this person could come from, but will reward you more, but there's certain things, like you're not handed as much, are you, in a boutique?
I think you're handed more, to be honest.
Really?
It depends how you define handed. I think support,
job flow, candidate flow.
Job flow, candidate flow, I mean, there's different qualifications of what that might look like, but I think in general what you get in Paragon is the ability to see the world, to see how things are done. There's a process in recruitment that doesn't change whether you work for a Deco, Page, Paragon, and the process is bringing product to market.
Yeah.
And I think, and for any podcast listeners who might take this the wrong way, I'm not here to offend anyone, but sometimes recruitment can be a very, people can overcomplicate it. It's not. It's a very, very simple. It's a very simple business. It's bringing good product to market, following a process, and working in an environment where there are KPIs, not KPIs that you're suffering with, but KPIs that are enhancing your performance.
Yeah.
Because we all want to know we finished the day and we've had a good day. We finished the week. It's been
you need to know what success is.
Completely. So I think the process, wherever, if there's a process in place and people know they have to meet. The reason why I'm 20 years in recruitment. I said I had about 5 hours sleep last night, but I absolutely love this industry. Yeah. It's just, and even going back to something I forgot to mention. The first candidate the Paragon placed, and I would say his name, Richard Doyle, he was at my wedding. Yeah. And Richard's a friend of mine. So it's just an amazing business to just, you learn so much. You learn so much from candidates. They are, they're just fantastic. You're every day you're learning. So following a process, and working in an environment where there are KPIs, not KPIs that you're suffering with, but KPIs that are enhancing your performance. Yeah. Because we all want to know we finished the day and we've had a good day. We finished the week. It's been.
You need to know what success is.
Completely. So I think the process, wherever, if there's a process in place and people know they have to meet. The reason why I'm 20 years in recruitment. I said I had about 5 hours sleep last night, but I absolutely love this industry. Yeah. It's just, and even going back to something I forgot to mention. The first candidate the Paragon placed, and I would say his name, Richard Doyle, he was at my wedding. Yeah. And Richard's a friend of mine. So it's just an amazing business to just, you learn so much. You learn so much from candidates. They are, they're just fantastic. You're every day you're learning. So
speaking of learning, talk to me about what the process was to find a non-exec that you trusted, that you bought into. What does a non-exec do for somebody like you?
So we put together a board of 3 non-execs. We've got Ross Eads, Peter Cosgrove, and Chris Johns, who's on kind of from an economist perspective, looking at markets globally and helping us when we're talking to CIOs in hedge funds in Hong Kong or Singapore or Dubai. And Chris has been phenomenal and helped us put together a phenomenal. Fantastic Brexit conference last year. So when we look for these people, we look for one thing: it's wisdom. And anybody who's got a 20, 30, 4-year track record in their industry. Obviously with Chris, he was he was chief investment officer for State Street. He was an economist for the Bank of England. And then you have people like Ross Eads, who's to a very long time. And it's trying to tap into their wisdom.
How did you even get into that circle to get a meeting with them?
That's a really good. That's a question.
They're not as available as people might think.
They're not at all. Yeah. Because a huge amount of my role is travel. So typically in a quarter, I work between Dublin, London, the US, Middle East, and when you're traveling, you're just inquisitive. And so someone had told me about in London about their success working in a recruitment company, and a lot of their success was down to kind of non-exec talent. This is a while ago, so I listened to that, and between taking that on board, then I made some calls in the UK. I got introduced to 2 very senior non-execs, and one was Ross Eads. So I had made a couple of calls. Yeah. This is a business about being proactive. So being proactive with attracting talent, being proactive trying to bring in business, and being proactive trying to bring in a non-exec. So we got introduced to Ross Eads. Yeah. Who is now?
Could they be fussy enough over who they'd work with?
Absolutely. No, they are, and we're very, very lucky. And we've got Ross and Peter Cosgrove, who's an absolute fantastic asset to Paragon. Because these guys they know more than you. And I think.
What type of stuff do they know more than you?
Do you know? I don't even think it's they know, I know. It's just that extra. it's the humility to understand that in certain situations, what you might deem as correct could actually be wrong.
Because they've got eyes on hundreds of different businesses and best practice.
They've been there, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has made mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And everybody will continue to make mistakes. That's just human nature. But these guys have got great wisdom. They've got great oversight, and if there's an issue and we need to look for advice, these guys just have a different way of looking at things, because we're in the trenches, right? We're in the trenches. We have so many things to do on a daily basis, and if we come up against something, someone like Ross, who's not as in the trenches as we are, he can just see things from a more strategic perspective. And a lot of these guys as well, they've got great listening skills. So you probably come up with the answer yourself, but they'll give you a very safe environment to explore what the issue is, and with the view to coming out with the best possible outcome for the business.
Yeah. And do they start with numbers and then work through processes and then work through people? Have you seen like a set formula in how they analyse where you're at in the business, or is it like an open forum?
It's a little bit of everything. It comes down to their experience and what they've done before. But if you look at someone like Ross, so Ross is IPO2 companies. He's near 30 years in the business. He's currently CEO of Red Commerce, which is like a 450 consultant firm with offices all over the world. He's just been through it, multiple times. So when you ask Ross what does he think, he's not going to automatically tell you what he thinks, but he's going to help you understand what are the benefits of going down this road, and what are the benefits of going down this road, and what are the consequences. And when you work through something with somebody that has so much more experience than you, you're just going to be a better outcome.
Yeah. And do they hold you accountable to the decisions that you've made?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. A lot of the times, I think the accountability stands with the directors of the firm. And when you're a business owner, the accountability is with you. There can be no blame in this business. And I've made mistakes before. Saying, "Oh, look, it's this or that." It's at the end of the day, the decision will lie with the management team. We'll make the best decision that we think is appropriate at that time with the best information. But you always feel more comfortable when you've talked through with a senior individual like Ross or Peter. Yeah. And you don't always get it right.
And I know you're into this holistically. It's not just about money. It's like you're into the whole game of the business, and you're thirsty for knowledge. What is it that when you wake up in the morning you're excited about going into work 20 years later? What is it that really gets you going?
What gets me going? It's because we've created something in Paragon where we look at things from a global perspective. Like my first call, if I'm not cycling to work, which I probably
listen to my podcast.
Which your podcasts are fantastic, Dylan. It's actually lovely to meet you again. Thank you so much for coming in. But I think what I love about Paragon today is how we think about the world. Like we talk about there's no borders, no boundaries, and there can't be. So sometimes my first call, a lot of times my first call is to a candidate in Hong Kong, Singapore. Our biggest client, Paragon's biggest customer, 7-year track record is in the Middle East, so they're 4 hours ahead. So you're automatically just engaged in not just how these different cultures, different values, different customs, different ways of life. Like what
so there's a different puzzle that you can solve every day.
Complete different puzzle, and it's, I think, starting the day, turning on your phone, whatever, 10:07, you're automatically thrown into something that requires a solution. Yeah. So there is no time to think. So you're straight into it. Now, obviously what we need to do, and what I've done a lot more in the last year, is getting exercise in the morning and making sure that you're, when you had that first email or call, that you've got rid of the,
as well.
With 2 children. So to answer your question, you're in Paragon, we're straight into something that needs solving, or there's a piece of work in Asia or the Middle East. And then a lot of emails that when I turn my phone off, I've started to turn my phone off every single night at 8:45.
Really?
I've had, yeah.
When did you start that?
About 6 months ago. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Look, because we do in recruitment or in any business, we have to, what do they say? Renewable. We've got to renew our energy. Time is finite.
Sure.
Time is finite. Children are important. Our friends are important. Energy is renewable. So if we're not going to renew our energy at night time, and I used to work up to midnight, and I used to love it, but I'd be walking into work the next day. not firing on all cylinders. So I stopped that again. You know, everything is learning. So turn the phone off for 9:15 almost every night. You're automatically thrown into something that requires a solution.
Yeah.
So there is no time to think. So you're straight into it. Now, obviously what we need to do, and what I've done a lot more in the last year, is getting exercise in the morning and you know, making sure that you're, you know, when you had that first email or call, that you've got rid of the, you know,
as well.
With 2 children. So to answer your question, you're in Paragon, we're straight into something that needs solving, or there's a piece of work in Asia or the Middle East. And then a lot of emails that when I turn my phone off, I've started to turn my phone off every single night at 9:15.
Really?
I've had, yeah.
When did you start that?
About 6 months ago. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Look, because we do, in recruitment or in any business, we have to, you know, what do they say, you know, renewable. We've got to renew our energy, you know. Time is finite.
Sure.
Time is finite. Children are important, our friends are important. You know, energy is renewable. So if we're not going to renew our energy at night time, and I used to work up to midnight, and I used to love it, but I'd be walking into work the next day, you know, not firing on all cylinders. So I stopped that again. You know, everything is learning. So turn the phone off for 9:15 almost every night.
Well, Colin, thanks so much, and it was just great to get to know you and your business, and I just love how global it is. I love that you're reaching for information from non-execs, and I just think it's a real different proposition to what other people have here.
And Julie, can I just say before I finish up, I just want to thank you and Sharon for coming in today. But you know, Paragon, you know, is a growing firm, and if there are any recruiters that want to talk to us coming back from Sydney, or want to move from Sydney, you know, back into Dublin, but want to support Asia from Dublin, or want to look at, you know, going out to the US and helping Paragon achieve the goals in the US, please, you know, reach out to yourself, Dulta, or myself directly. And I just want to finish off by saying, you know, the podcast that I've listened from Dulta over the last few weeks have been absolutely inspiring. So thank you, and keep it up.
Thank you.